of liberals, particularly college social justice warrior liberals, they've been trained to assess you before they assess your argument. So even if you come in with okay, let me tell you why I'm a libertarian and here's my argument, they're already like, he's a white man.
Yeah.
He's probably just trying to defend his power, and he hasn't come to terms with his privilege.
I don't believe this, but a lot of libertarian speakers and a lot of people trying to make money off of the libertarian brand basically always like to sit there and say, millennials are the most libertarian generation we've ever had. Do you believe that? Do you not believe that?
I wish. I think there's this tendency for certain libertarians to take this route of, everyone's a libertarian, they just don't know it yet, or that attitude. I wish I could believe that. I wish I could believe that this millennial generation is a libertarian generation. I don't know. I mean, they're probably not as bad as their loudest representatives. Like, not all millennials are setting up safe spaces.
Right.
I think Rand Paul had this big bet that he placed that millennials really care about you collecting their metadata. He used to hold up this phone. This is what the young people really care about. I don't think that actually got people out in large numbers.
Well,
and look, what Bernie Sanders has proven is no. I mean, I think that young people are very much suckers for the argument that the state is the humanitarian daddy figure. We're going to give you free college and free stuff, and you can hang out in your safe space and everything will be fine, and we'll make sure nobody says anything that hurts your feelings.
Do you think that there's like a way to take on a Bernie Sanders person where you could sit there and say, like, hey, listen, you hate Wall Street's influence on the government. It's going to make that worse, the government being bigger.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I think that's the argument that you have to make. I think you have to sit down and have a real conversation with liberals about what government is. But I do think, let's say if you come at it from a pure libertarian standpoint, like if you come at it from a Ron Paul angle, I think there's a compelling message that can be made to these kids. You can say, okay, look, this guy, Bernie Sanders, who, you guys claim to be anti-war, anti-mass incarceration, anti-government surveillance. Well, Bernie Sanders' track record on those three issues isn't that great. He's supported a lot of militarism. He voted for that same crime bill that Hillary Clinton gets in trouble for voting for. Yeah, Bernie Sanders voted for that. Oh. And now he claims it's like, well, I didn't understand the bill at the time. But he did vote for that.
Yeah. My favorite joke you wrote was your no internet joke, where you said you're addicted to something you don't understand. You fundamentally don't understand.
Right.
But the best line you had in it was about SOPA, and you said how Facebook and Google and the people stopped. You said it's this beautiful moment where we could control the government if we wanted to, but 2 months beforehand we had indefinite detention. No one gave a shit.
Well, it's pretty amazing how, like, the level of outrage that Americans have about certain issues while completely avoiding other ones. I'm glad you like that joke, because it's a few years old now, and now no one cares about this anymore. But yeah, there was this huge uprising to stop SOPA, which was an attempt to regulate the internet. The same year, only a few months earlier, they added a provision into the NDAA bill that said they can detain Americans without charges and hold them indefinitely. And the mass reaction was like, that's not cool. Everyone flipped out. That was my generation. Everyone flipped out. Like, Facebook and Twitter were all on fire, and Google had this whole campaign to shut it down. And they shut it down, by the way. Congress never even voted on the bill. They just proposed it. They were like, maybe we should regulate the internet. And then everyone flipped out, and then they just took it back. They were like, we're just kidding. And it was like, really? That's... Like, we shut it down. It was this beautiful moment in time where you realize that, like, the people really do control the government if they want to. And then we moved on to just find some other issue that we want. But I blame everybody. It's amazing, like, liberal activists who are losing their minds over really important issues like catcalling. Never touch this one because it was from their president, I guess, and they like him. But the media... What self-respecting person who considers themselves a journalist would be like, okay, so they just passed a law that undoes every right that Americans have. And they'd be like, I don't know if we can squeeze that into our coverage.
For speech is taken much more harshly than actual policies, President Obama has been the least friendly president since George W. Bush was president towards African Americans. They've done a lot worse during his presidency.
Right.
But Trump said, my African American, that was news for 2 days.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's the world that we've lived in, where you'll have, right, so Trump will say something, and even when Trump says something that should be offensive, right? Like when Trump goes, okay, so we're gonna bring back torture, or we're gonna target the families of terrorists. Obama has actually targeted the families of terrorists. With his drone campaign, he's killing family members of terrorists. By the way, one who was a kid who was an American citizen. And that got far less media coverage than just Donald Trump saying it. Like, that's the world we live in. Like, where Donald Trump will be like, we should go after the family members of terrorists. And they go, oh, don't talk about that. My God, that's in such poor taste.
Yeah.
I mean, do what you got to do, but don't
Right.
you don't tell people
Do you
that.
think that do you love or hate the fact that the Republican is not a neocon, the Democrat is not a progressive, and the Libertarian is not a libertarian? Like none of the parties follow their mantra.
I've never even thought about it exactly like that before, but that is kind of a beautiful thing. I don't know. I don't know what's going to come out of all of this. I don't know if I love it or not. The one part of that I definitely don't love is that the Libertarian isn't a Libertarian. Yeah. I wish we had a real Libertarian.
Bill Weld is their VP. It's amazing. Like, I mean, it's amazing the fact that these people built themselves on political purity, and then Bill Weld is their VP, and Gary Johnson.
Bill Weld, a guy who looked at this race at the very beginning, and he said, you know who's my guy? Kasich.
Yeah.
That's who I like. That's who I endorse. That's our Libertarian, the guy who endorsed John Kasich.
Yeah.
That part I don't like. I wish there was a real Libertarian voice out there. I wish Ron Paul was a few years younger and he could still be out there really, championing liberty. I do love, between the Trump and the Bernie moment, I love that at least the American voters in this election didn't just like if Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush had just waltzed their way to the nomination,
right.
That would be a much more depressing state of affairs than the fact that even Hillary Clinton's supporters are holding their nose to support her, and Donald Trump, I think, maybe it's morphed into a true support for him, but I think that was more of just a middle finger to everybody else.
President, right?
Hold on, just give me a second.
Right, yeah. If Hillary becomes president, what do you fear most of her being in the White House for 4 years? And then what would you fear the most of the Trump presidency being in 4 years, if you had to counterweight?
Okay. The biggest fear of Hillary being president is war. Hillary is a war hawk, and she supported every war of my lifetime. If you look at her reign as Secretary of State, we got the harshest sanctions against Iran that I think we've ever gotten through. As soon as she got out of there, we reached a deal with Iran. I would say my biggest fear would be she tears up that deal and we go back toward the path of another war, toppling another dictatorship in the Middle East, having another failed state. Look, we don't like to think of these things. We live in this crazy politically correct world where Donald Trump mentioning that a judge is Mexican is a far greater offense than Hillary Clinton destroying the country of Libya. But if you look at what's actually scary about a Hillary Clinton presidency is that she destroyed the country of Libya and then bragged about that as an example of her success.
Is that video of her laughing?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, she's truly a terrifying sociopathic person. And so that's my big fear of Hillary Clinton. The big fear of Trump is, Trump is like, no one knows what he would be as president. Trump is literally, it's literally going, hey, do you want Hillary Clinton or what's behind door number 3? And I'll admit, compared to Hillary Clinton, door number 3 seems very attractive, but it's door number 3. Donald Trump might nuke someone who says he has small hands.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's capable of doing.